on the altar today a special picture of Sri Yukteswar, whose birthday we celebrated Friday night. And Sri Yukteswar had a wonderful thing to say about service. He said, as long as you breathe the free air of earth, it is your duty to render grateful service. So this reading is about serving in the right way. It's so easy to feel that there's our list, and we have to check off every item on that list, and we have to drive here, and we have to take the children there, and we have to do this, and we have to earn a living, and we have to pay our bills, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And it can get so intense with all the things that we have to do. I call it brain burn. Just the mind gets fevered. And poor Martha, who can't sympathize with Martha? She has honored guests in her home. She has the Messiah in her home. She wants to make a beautiful meal. She wants to serve them graciously. She wants to give in a beautiful way. And her helper disappears. One can fantasize and think Martha's whispering to Mary, Mary, get in here. And she gets up her courage, she goes and taps her on the shoulder. The pots are boiling over. The stew needs the vegetables that aren't chopped. She's counting on her sister to help her. But Mary is in bliss. She's sitting at the feet of the Master. She probably doesn't even hear Martha. And if she does, it's making no impression because her heart is so full. And finally, Martha works up her courage and says, Lord, tell my sister to come and help me. And instead she's scolded. Martha, Martha, you are troubled and careful about many things, but there's one thing that is needful. And Jesus isn't saying, so just take the pots off the fire, let everybody go hungry. It's, we're just not doing dinner. Everybody can starve. He's not saying that at all. He's saying, Martha, Martha, where is your consciousness? Serve. Do all those things. Run the children here and there and make a living and pay the bills and do all the things on the list conscientiously as best you can. But keep your mind on God. It's not easy. That overflowing pot has a certain magnetism. It's calling you. It wants your attention. But even in the midst of everything, all the pots boiling over in our lives, and there are quite a few of them, keep your mind on God. Yes, it's not automatic. It's not something, oh yes, you can just do it like that and you're done, and yeah, forever, you're going to just be one-pointed. We have to practice it. We have to keep our minds focused at the point between the eyebrows. Feel that energy there. Feel that expansion. Feel that beautiful light that's there. Cling to that. And we get these little moments in our meditation that are beautiful and peaceful, and it feels like, oh yes, this is who I am, and this is forever. I can never lose that. And then the phone rings. It's gone. In the midst of everything, train your mind to sing God's name. Train your heart to sing God's name. That's why we sang this little chant, who is in my temple? Constantly ask yourself that. This temple of the body and mind and soul, who is in there? Who is it? Is it that calm, peaceful inner self that loves God and knows that this whole world is his dream? And we, like Shakespeare said, are men and women are merely actors, have their moment on the stage and disappear. All this busyness that we cling to and think is so important. I brought a poem to read to you. This is one that Swami often quoted. It's by Percy Shelley. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, is a shattered visage, a face, whose frown with wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. And on the pedestal of this visage, these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look at my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Nothing we do in this world is all that important. Though it may seems to be vitally important. And yes, we need to be careful, conscientious, and do our duty, as Sri Yukteswar is saying, to render grateful service. But that one thing needful is to keep our minds on God while we're doing it. It's a trick. It takes practice. That's why we continually study. That's why we continually come to Sunday service, to be reminded. The Festival of Light is a perfect reminder. It's such a beautiful poem, really. It's a mystical poem, the Festival of Light. It's the allegory of the little bird going through all the stages of the soul's long journey through time and space. At one point, the little bird says, wind and rain lashed at its wings. How can I fly in this darkness? The little bird asks, and the wind responds and says, give yourself into my hands. To your strength I can then add my own. That's what God is saying. He's saying you think you are the doer of all your actions. That's a delusion. God is the doer. And the moment that we surrender into his hands, his strength is added to our own. I remember one time I was driving in a snowstorm, and I had made it up a very steep hill because the sun was shining on that hill, and so it wasn't as icy. But I came down on the north side, and I just started skating. And I had no control over the car. The brakes were not even in the running. And I went right into a ditch. Well, the ditch was full of snow, and I just sort of landed softly, snowing all around me, and I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel saying, Lord, what do I do now? I'm stuck in a ditch. and there was a little tap on the window. And this young man said, "Want me to lift you out of there?" And I said, "Why, yes." And he had a pickup truck, and he just popped my little Dodge Dart right out of there. No problem at all. But he was an angel in answer to my prayer. God uses all of us and everyone as his angels. Pray, believing, and God will help you with all those pots that are boiling over. God will be right there. Keep your heart on him.
This topic, including as it does service, I thought to sing for you and for the choir with you, if you will. Lord, may we serve you. This is a song that Swamiji wrote and captures beautifully the spirit of this day. And happy Mother's Day. We'll get to that in a moment.
May we serve you all our days, ever rejoice to sing your praise, as we together your wisdom seek. Charge us with truth whenever we speak. Lord, may we ever know your will. Come to us when our thoughts are still, as we your guidance of joy receive. May we as one bliss achieve, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve. Okay.
I remember when we were first learning that song back in the mid-1980s, and we had a choir and a very dignified director, and we were singing that song, and Swamiji heard it, and he said, "Don't sing it like that." We were singing it very slowly. Lord, may we serve you all our day. So that sounds like a funeral dirge. So we had to speed it up a bit. Anyway, happy Mother's Day to all the Divine Mothers who are here in the room and all who are walking this world. Motherhood and the service that connects it and connects this service today, the topic of this service, run very deep. And Master worshiped the Divine Mother, and his own mother was her very, very powerful representative in this world for him, but for us also by extension. And when we think of motherhood, you can't separate it from service. There's going to be that ennobling service, that element of self-sacrifice, and it speaks to our hearts. It speaks to our depths, really. In this culture, earning a living, men don't get a lot of extra points for earning a living. It's sort of expected. And in India, motherhood is sort of expected. Swami had this interesting interchange with Ananda Ma, where he thanked her for something that she had given him, I believe. And she looked at him and she said, "Would you thank your own mother?" And he said, "Well, yes, I would." And it was a very different culture in a way, and yet, this is an interesting part of it. There is this closeness. One doesn't express outwardly the deepest feelings inwardly because they lose something. You actually kind of lose a little bit. And we have to be careful in our culture we can say, I love you, mother, or whomever, but we also have to live that love. Otherwise, the outward expression of it isn't sort of carried forward on the sounding board of our lives. And this is the part that it's very touching to us when we think back on all the ways that Mother has sacrificed. In this reading, or in the, I guess it was in the affirmation reading, Swami is saying that we release the hold the ego has on us by divine service, by seeing that it isn't just people that we're serving, we're actually serving God. And I'm reminded that in the Bible, there's this interesting corollary that Christ gives us. He who would save his life will lose it, and he who offers that life for my sake will have it eternally. That's the gift of service. When we offer it willingly and lovingly, then we actually have the life, because all of us are instruments. All the moms in this world are, in fact, representatives of the Divine Mother. I, perhaps unfairly, will repeat this story. Seva at Ananda village, one of the early ones who helped Swamiji get the Ananda community started and just really gave the place a lot of love and attention, and helped manage the Ananda village for some years. She and I were close in those early years, not on a human level. I was very young and she's of a different generation, but she guided me in a very motherly way. And I remember I referred to her as my Divine Mother. She's like my Divine Mother. And my mom heard that, and at one point, she didn't say anything at that point, but then, I forget, weeks or months later, she said, now who was that lady that reminded you of me? That's sort of the idea in a way. Again, please understand, this is totally not fair, and I have to tell some stories to her benefit, because we don't really have the concept of the Divine Mother in this culture so much, when we could use to do so. Swamiji often made the point that this whole world needs the Divine Mother, needs that feminine influence of nurturing, of compassion, of support, of the humanness of it, the day-to-day now part of it, not the, we need way less of the Ozymandias, look on my works and despair, the curling lip and all of that sort of thing. Actually, it's interesting, I because she was going to share that poem, I did a little bit of research. I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know the story of it. That poem came up partly because Shelley was against or not very supportive of the incredible expansion of the British Empire. He was a British citizen, and so part of that was a little bit of a rap against this unbelievably expanding empire across the world. And someone in noting this, in researching about the poem, noted that the poem survived the British Empire. And it's still known and loved today. And it's fascinating to think how, Shakespeare told us that the evil men do often lives on after them, but the good seems to get buried with their bones. I'm paraphrasing. But in fact, in many ways, it's the opposite. It's the good that we do. It's the gift that we give to the world, often in very, very subtle ways, that lives on. A glance, a look, a word, a comment will often help someone, uplift someone, touch someone in a very deep way we may never even know. We may never even know. In my own life, one of the gifts that my mom gave me is the gift to fly. And I don't mean by flapping my wings or climbing on airplanes, but to psychically leave the nest. You know, one of the duties of a mother, one of the roles of a mother is to provide that nest and to the safety and the security and closeness and support of it. But at a certain point also to recognize that a bird needs to fly and needs to move on and go and explore. And just before I came to Ananda in the late 1970s, she gifted me a book of Ram Dass's called Grist for the Mill, a spiritual book about exploring your spiritual potential. And she really supported this move to Ananda and to explore spirituality on a deeper level. And it has remained supportive all these years, actually, since that time. And that's a real blessing, because we influence each other all the time. This is one of the reasons that Yogananda gave us the precious little aphorism, environment is stronger than willpower. Because environment is always talking to us, and our family, you know, is always speaking to us in one way or another. It doesn't have to be through outward words, but that sense of commitment and direction is always talking to us. And mothers have to, and this is something that my own mother shared with me. This was after my sisters had their own children, but she was commenting once that people don't realize what a creative demand parenthood takes. It's a real effort to tune into, it's a real art to tune into the nature of that child and give that child the support and the scope to be who they truly are. And, you know, we often tend to think it's about the dishes and the diapers and the, you know, the dirty house or whatever, all the things of it. But it's really about the support of that child, and that's what art is. You start a work of art, and if it's truly art, if it's truly deep and it truly speaks, it takes on a life of its own. And I remember this Swamiji writing about art, and himself a very deep artist, and really probing what is art, how does it work, why does it endure, is because it has a living presence to it. And someone has tuned into that essence and expressed it and given it life and helped it to find its actual potential. And that's what a parent does. That's what a mother does especially, is nurture that essence of the child and to give it scope. And, you know, so often, Swamiji, in referring to his own life, he reflected on the gift that his parents were both away, in karmically the gift that they were away when he embraced the spiritual life, because he didn't know if he could have resisted their, you know, in a sense you could say the familial warmth, as Yogananda put it in Autobiography of a Yogi, that sense of we're family and we know what's best for you, but they happen to be away. And his mother was very supportive of him inwardly, but she might have resisted him outwardly when that sudden move came, and it would have seemed so very, very unfamiliar to them and out of the context of their awareness of what's proper and what's sort of appropriate in life. All of us need to be representatives of the Divine Mother in this world, and to honor her presence, her dream of helping everyone live their highest potential. All of us can do that, whether men or women. We all can be that representative of the Divine Mother, and it's really our job to do so, because this world needs that. We've had way too much of the conquering spirit, trying to conquer nature, trying to sort of twist her arm behind her back and coax yet one more special treasure, and it just doesn't work. That's not the need of this age. The need is, in fact, for a more holistic, more compassionate world And I think we see that all around, in the environment, in the political world, in the social world, in the spiritual world as well. Live that compassion. Live that inward awareness that each person who comes into our lives comes for a reason, comes with their own nature, and we have to tune into that nature. We can't speak to that nature without knowing it. You can't love what you don't know, which is another way of saying that if you're going to love God, you have to come to know God. You have to come to know that presence inside. And as Nirmala was pointing out, we have to practice that. That's not something that comes naturally unless we practice and until we practice. And yes, we may have a very deep experience, and I suppose all of us at one time or another have had such, where we just feel the naturalness of the divine presence within. We feel that bliss, we feel that peace, and we say, I remember. I remember what I am. I remember how it is supposed to be. And then perhaps the phone rings, or perhaps something else happens, and we get distracted, we get deflected, we get pushed off into a different state of consciousness, and we lose that. And it's very, very precious when it comes. And we have to practice remembering that. Divine realization is referred to as smriti in the Indian scriptures, and that word is a Sanskrit one, smriti. It means memory. We remember who we are. It's not that something is being overlaid on top of us and then somehow we're divine, or we're brought to our full potential. No, we actually grow into something that was ours all along. We've just simply forgotten it. Meditation helps us to remember that. Let us practice each day, but let us especially dive into a life of being aware of God's presence at all times of day or night, whether meditating, whether not meditating, because in a sense, all of life is meditation anyway. It's just that sometimes we sit down, and other times we do it while we're walking or serving or driving or talking on the phone or whatever. Know that Divine Mother's presence works through you. We just open our hearts, and her love can pass through us and to touch other people. Namaste.